Is deploying the members of the police the best way to respond to the concerns of the communities in Bontuheville and Kensington?
No, sir, that you would need to ask national government, because remember, the public disorder is a national policing competency. So when there is civil disorder, or as in the case with these protest marches, the occupation of land without a gatherings permit, then the policing the decisions around how to do that policing response is done by the South African police. I have great sympathy for the protesters, and I share their sentiments. I think policing is in a dreadful state, and that's why I've encouraged the provincial government to go get a High Court mandamus against SAPS and national government so that we can get things right, so we don't have to protest. But the ridiculous thing here is that COSATU, who primarily drove these marches, is effectively protesting against themselves.
If you share the protesters' sentiments, Mr. Smith, why aren't you on the ground?
Regularly, you must understand in this case, because it's an illegal protest, that made it impossible for DA activists to join the protest. It's also essentially a political issue in that you have COSATU, who's part of national government, protesting against a policing competency held by national government. We are doing practical things that will change the scenario, because after this protest tomorrow, we will be in as bad a boat as we were before it. So while some people are talking about it, we're doing this year now, we're in the process of recruiting 66 million rand extra police. That while national government is scaling down their police numbers this year by 3,000 and 10,000 over the next 3 years. So they're digging a deeper and deeper hole for us. We're trying to actively dig our way out of that hole. We're getting the High Court mandamus. We're training neighborhood watchers. And we're trying to build safer communities as best we can within the very limited scope to do so in terms of numbers and limited powers that is available to Metro Police compared to what SAPS have.
How is this a COSATU-sponsored march, Mr. Smith, when it is the communities who've organized themselves and said, today we are shutting down the city of Cape Town because of the issues of gangsterism, whether it be poverty and unemployment? How is this a COSATU-sponsored march? I've not seen any COSATU official, by the way, on the ground there.
Oh, no, you would need to ask COSATU that, because they put out a press statement not but 3-4 days ago claiming credit for it and saying they were doing so in consultation with civil society. Well, the civil society organizations are thinly veiled COSATU fronts, and who held meetings with COSATU regalia. Roshanda Pascoe in Manenberg spoke in front of a COSATU banner and then threw community members out of the meeting who said that, or when asked if it's a public meeting, was told, no, this is a private COSATU meeting. So the meetings to mobilize were very political. The civil society front that's put on it is another matter, but that's not the issue. The issue is that the cause is absolutely valid. The fact that no permit was applied for by COSATU is a problem, because that means that this morning SAPS under national government is in conflict with protesters, and that's ideally not what we want, because theoretically these protesters are protesting for more resources to make SAPS's life easier. So we should be all on the same side, but the irresponsible manner in which the arrangements were made have cast people in a conflicting role. The city is not keen to get involved in that. We're making sure that our staff don't take any hard-handed action.
So as a member of the security cluster in the Western Cape government, what steps have you taken to try and see to it that gangsterism is rooted out? Because it's clear that this matter is actually stubborn to resolve.
Absolutely. So let's start at the back end. At the moment, we're seeing a very poor conviction rate emanate from the criminal justice system that's controlled by national government, so we don't have any control in any part of that. However, we have been doing watching briefs to track key gang cases through the provincial government and through the city's SIU to see what happens to those cases, and to write to the National Prosecuting Authority to ask for those cases to be put back on the court roll. And that has happened in 92% of our requests. So we're trying to make sure that the criminal justice system works, even though we don't have control of it. As for enforcement resources, that we have year-on-year increase. So when I took over as Mayoral Member, the city didn't touch the gang violence issue. It was deemed to be a matter for SAPS. From then till now, we're spending around 16 million rand a year on stabilization unit, the neighborhood safety team in Delft, which is a pilot program, our gang and drug task team, the sniffer dogs, shot spotter technology, the gunfire detection technology in Hanover Park and Manenberg, which has increased our firearm recovery rate by about 5-fold. So we have a whole range of interventions, including additional CCTV cameras in these communities, extra policing staff, which the administration before us didn't believe was even the city's function. We are, however, sadly or seriously crippled by the fact that we do not have investigative powers. So once we hand those cases over to SAPS, you'll end up seeing a 2 or 3% conviction rate on those gang murders, and that means that by and large, the gangsters keep on killing because for them there's no consequences to their actions.
JP Smith, I just want to go back to your first response about the deployment of police. So you're saying that you were not in favor of the police being deployed there, or you would not respond in as far as the police deployment to these areas is concerned. So how would you have had this situation play itself out then? In other words, what would you have wanted to do, or how would you have responded to the situation?
That die was cast for us by COSATU in terms of how these protest marches were organized. I mean, they've been organizing this for months. The community meetings have been going on for months. And so there's been ample time to apply for a permit under the Regulation of Gatherings Act, which is national legislation. And yes, there is a constitutional court ruling that affects the legislation. But unfortunately, if you're not applying, then the street closures that you're effecting are not legal. COSATU understands that. The legislation at stake is their legislation. They're in national government. By now, they should have changed it if they didn't believe in it. So the right thing to do would have been to put in a permit application. There was ample time to do so, and we could have had a very different environment this morning. As it is, what we must try and do is prevent any of this from becoming dangerous and violent. We did see tires being lit this morning. There was live gunfire in Voortrekker Road reported. So we have had some public violence, and SAPS will have to try and contain that. During public disorder situations, SAPS are in charge, and Metro Police then report to or answer to SAPS, as the legislation says. But the protests haven't been very widespread. This morning at about 7:30, we had only about 300 to 350 protesters. I think those figures have grown to about 450 now citywide. So not a very big turnout. Many of the neighborhood watchers, sensing that this was predominantly political, have in fact stayed away.
Just as a final question to you, how do you respond to the residents concerned that if and when there is gang violence taking place in these areas of Bonteheerville and, of course, Kensington, you're quick to deploy the police there? In fact, you're not quick, rather, to deploy the police, especially in the numbers that we're seeing this morning. But when it's a peaceful march by residents, we see a massive deployment like we're seeing there this morning.
You do understand that you're speaking to a representative from local government and not the National Police Minister. We don't control SAPS in any way. Neither myself nor MEC Dan Plato have any control over the South African Police. So I can't answer that question for you. All I can say to you is that Metro Police spend all of their time now pursuing these things. And we have just published stats around the firearm arrests we've done, the number of firearms we've taken off the street in the last 6 months, the arrests we've done for drugs, firearms, high flyers with gang convictions or with outstanding warrants of arrest, the actions we've done, the work we're doing on a social level in terms of matrix drug treatment clinics, in terms of recreation hubs for young people, in terms of entrepreneurship programs. So there is as much as a local government can do, I promise you, is being done. And if you had more time, I'm happy to unpack those for you. But the allegation aimed at the city is not fair. Aimed at national government, absolutely. We have one cop for every 560 members of the public in the city. Nationally, there's one for every 367. You tell me what's going on here. Why has national government left us with such an incredible absence of police? So those communities are right to protest, although the manner they're going about it may be slightly flawed as a result of the lack of the application of the permit.